Let me introduce myself. My name is Tanya Baldwin-Pask and I am now Chair of Marlow Refugee-Action. We are delighted to have you with us this evening. This is our annual meeting and it's a great opportunity for us to be sharing with all of you what we've been doing for the last year, 18 months, and also to talk about what our plans are for the upcoming year. 2020 was, of course, a really difficult year for all of us due to the global pandemic. And for the 26.3 million refugees globally, the challenges that they are facing in their everyday lives were further exacerbated by COVID-19, including restrictions placed upon them due to travel and movement restrictions as a result of the pandemic. We'll be hearing a little bit more about that from our contributors, as well as the challenges posed on the ground by the changes brought about by Brexit. We wanted to just begin this evening by giving some context for our discussion tonight, and just to highlight 3 developments that have happened in the last year that are relevant to UK policy. In May 2020, we were really concerned to see the ending of the scheme which had brought unaccompanied child refugees to the UK. And that was despite thousands still being stranded on the continent. The DUB scheme, which you're probably very familiar with, was initially envisaged as offering settlement to around 3,000 child refugees. But this was later capped to 480 places in 2017. As the government no longer has any other scheme for providing sanctuary for unaccompanied minors in Europe who do not have relatives in the UK, the end of the scheme effectively means an end to the UK's offer of protection to these children, and we're really concerned about that. Due to the COVID pandemic, the resettlement programs were temporarily suspended across many countries in the world. Unfortunately, the UK has yet to resume its program, and we hope it will do so really quickly. The plan is to have a new scheme in place where the government agrees to resettle about 5,000 of the world's most vulnerable refugees. We have suggested to our supporters in our latest newsletter that they contact their MP about this important issue, particularly important for the community organisations who are involved in this work of resettlement, because they need to know what they are planning for and when. And I'm really delighted to just advise that Joy Morrissey, who is MP for many of you, if you're a Marlow constituent, was planning to be on this call. She's just waiting to be called at the House of Parliament, but her assistant Thomas Broom is with us this evening. So Thomas, we'd be grateful if you would relay that message to Joy.
Of course.
Along with many organisations working to support asylum seekers, we're also concerned that since September 2020, the government has been using decommissioned army barracks in Kent and Wales to house some 665 asylum seekers. Because they're using dormitories, they cannot socially distance, and the conditions are reportedly very poor, unsanitary conditions, poor heating, and lack of access to GPs. Sadly, there have been a number of suicide attempts at these barracks, and there's now been an outbreak of COVID-19. The government is planning to keep the barracks in use for another 12 months, but many campaigning organisations are asking for them to look for alternative accommodation for these asylum seekers. If you're interested in finding out more about this campaign, which is very much a live issue at this time, then we will put some information in the chat box about organisations that you can contact. Tom's just done it there. Freedom from Torture is the organisation that is leading the charge. I'd like to finish this introduction with some more positive news. Those of you who attended our last annual meeting in 2019 will remember that our trustee, Dr. Wafa Alnasan, was in the process of passing her English exams and medical qualifications to work in the UK. We are so proud that she did so, and she is now working in the Buckinghamshire Trust of the NHS. On behalf of us all, we would like to thank Wafa for her tremendous contribution to helping all of us during this pandemic. It's now my great pleasure to invite Vanessa to provide us with an overview of our achievements and challenges in 2020. As you know, Vanessa is co-founder of Marlow Refugee-Action, and she stood down as chair of trustees at the end of last year. We are so pleased that she remains on our board, and I take this opportunity, Vanessa, to thank you on behalf of us all for all of your hard work. Over to you.
Thank you, Tanya. I'm going to just spend a little while painting two pictures, really. One about the environment that we've been working in the last year, and then the second picture is about our little charity and what we've been able to do against the backdrop of that environment. Obviously, the pandemic has been really hard for all of us. But it's difficult to imagine quite what it must be like trying to cope in a pandemic when you don't have a home. You may have been living in a tent or in a camp, or, as Tanya's mentioned, even an army barracks, where you may have little or no access to clean water, poor food, and any kind of mental stimulation or activities. So it's really difficult for us to even imagine what it must be like for somebody in those conditions. Many people have depended more and more on the grassroots NGOs, which amazingly have kept going almost without break throughout not only this country but also in Greece, particularly, where we've got quite a lot of contact. And together with just the pandemic, there have been a number of other significant events that have changed the environment. So things like the awful fire on Lesbos, where 12,000 people lost the homes that they had created. They may only have been tents, but they contained all their belongings, and they lost everything. The terrible explosion in Beirut, a country that's already on its knees and coping with about 1.5 million Syrian refugees. And as Tanya's mentioned already, the hardening of attitudes both in this country but also across Europe, where we've seen things like illegal pushbacks from the Greek government stopping people from arriving. So the overall environment is actually much worse than where we were a year ago, which, you know, was pretty well bad enough. But against that backdrop, our little charity has been quietly going about enabling operations to continue and providing funds to various places. And I'm just going to draw a little picture around a few of those things. So about a year ago, we were still able to hold events, and you may remember that we had a number of our lovely suppers at Cooper's, which were catered for by IMAD. We had a group of 9 volunteers who went across to Calais just over a year ago to work with Dom Ford, which is where he was at the time. We had an event about the situation for refugees in this country, a sort of information sharing event, which Sanctuary hosting, and Asylum Welcome in Oxford came along to help us talk about the situation for the asylum seekers face in this country. We've depended on the amazing support of our donors throughout this year, and we have a bedrock of people who give to us on a monthly basis, which is absolutely invaluable, and it enables us to plan activities and to deliver an amazing amount of help through the last year. And even though we weren't able to hold real face-to-face events from March onwards, we did a number of virtual events. We did a relay for refugees. We did another cooking session with IMAD, and we had a sleep out. And that all enabled us to raise an amazing amount of money. So in 2020, we raised an extraordinary £25,000 in funds, and we were able to make grants of around 19,000, which is more, both of those figures, more than we've ever done before. So I just feel it's absolutely extraordinary that this happened in probably the worst year that we could have faced. And some of the grants we gave, we enabled Samos Volunteers Legal Centre to go, supported by us for a third year. We provided a significant donation towards a vehicle in Calais, which was a great way to respond to the fact that Dom Ford has spent quite such a long time there. We provided a number of medical grants to Samos. We provided a significant grant to Lesvos to help them cope with the response to the fire. We made several grants to the Wickham Refugee Partnership, who we work very closely with. And we started a new partnership with Action for Education, which you're going to hear a bit more about a bit later on. So it was just an extraordinary year for us, both in terms of fundraising and also in terms of the help that we were able to give. And then I just want to sort of mention a few other sort of personal things that, or anecdotal things that happen, because it's not just all about the money, which of course is very important. But during this period, we also welcomed a new trustee, Nicola Monk. We are so fortunate to have people who, from Marlow, who volunteer out in the field. So to have both Dom Ford and James Perry, young people from Marlow who've given significant periods of their life to helping overseas. And we're going to hear from Dom a bit later. Tom, the other founding member of Marlow Refugee-Action, spent a couple of months teaching refugees in Athens last year, which he goes about in a very quiet, unassuming way, but it's an extraordinary thing to be able to do, and we're extraordinarily lucky to have those kind of face-to-face experiences to draw on as we go about our work. There was a medical volunteer as well from Marlow who went out to Samos for a month. We have teaching volunteers, as well as people like Michael Dupre, Michael, who we kind of claim as part of Marlow Refugee-Action because you happen to live in Marlow, even though you volunteer with the Wickham Refugee Partnership. And there are others in Marlow who have been doing virtual teaching during the lockdown. And we have a great relationship with Sanctuary Hosting, and during 2020, Marlow had its first host family able to host a guest for on a number of occasions. And in the middle of all that, we took the opportunity to have a strategic review, which one of the lovely attendees this evening helped us with, and you're going to hear more about that later too. So, you know, looking back, I'm extraordinarily proud of what we've achieved this year against the most awful circumstances. And it's thanks to our amazing array of supporters, of which many are here this evening. So thank you.
That's great, Vanessa, thank you very much. So great things happening in 2020 despite the challenges posed by the pandemic, the global refugee crisis and natural disasters as well. Vanessa's just mentioned Dom Ford, and we're now going to have a short video from Dom. As Vanessa said, he is from Marlow and he's actually with us on the call. So welcome, Dom. Great to have you with us. As Vanessa said, last year, Dom was running warehouses in both Calais and on the Isle of Chios, and several volunteers from Marlow went out to help Dom when he was in Calais. He kindly provides regular updates for us, which are available on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, and we'll be giving you the details of those later. But now we're just going to run the video to hear Dom providing us with an update on his latest venture.
What's that sign? Oh no.
It's a charity that's specifically focused on the supply of aid to the frontline groups, helping to move containers of aid across the continent completely at cost, thereby freeing up money to be better spent on helping those that really need it. And the main thing I've learned from working at Refugee-Aid is just a monumental effort across Europe. UK and Germany are the two biggest senders of aid, and containers are constantly being shipped to France or Greece. We've also been able to run a few other interesting shipments as well. We're currently moving 10,000 masks from LA to Calais, and also 50 laptops from Vienna down to a school in Lebanon. So yeah, loads of interesting shipments happening. On top of that, we've also been able to work on some really cool projects to really help improve the wider community. We've gone beyond just like moving aid, and now we want to ensure that when aid gets to the frontline group, that it's all useful and that it's been sorted and packaged in a really helpful way that just minimises and reduces double handling. We're developing a new standardised approach on quality checking, sorting and sizing donations that we really hope will be rolled out across Europe by both those sending and receiving aid. We've also been designing needs assessments that we'll soon start to use to help build up a clear understanding of what is and isn't needed where. There's no centralised system on how frontline groups can communicate what their needs are or indicate what aid they have that can be shared out. So we're really hoping that we can fill that void. Finally, as well, Brexit. It's obviously affected everyone who wants to ship to the EU, and donations from the UK is no different. I spent a lot of January on government websites trying to figure out what was now needed to be done at the border. And there's also, of course, the extra added complication of circumventing import taxes as we're moving humanitarian aid. I'm really happy to say that my research was compiled into a document that has been shared with the UK community. Yeah, if you're interested in how to move containers worth of secondhand clothing, check out the DA website. I'm now no longer personally doing frontline work. However, I'm in a pretty unique position where I talk to each of the main regions on a pretty much daily basis. On top of that, Collective Aid have operations down here in Belgrade, and I know a few of them from my time working for Collective Aid in Calais. So yeah, having worked in each of the regions across Europe and seen the results of the European-wide policy, I suppose I'm not just kind of not surprised anymore. I know how dehumanising, humiliating and illegal the policy is, whether it's the evictions in Calais or the pushbacks in Greece or the beatings by the Croatian and Romanian police officers. When I use that word illegal as well, like, I really mean it. These are like crimes enshrined in international law. I think the biggest takeaway from my experience today is really just, as Europe, we like to think we're really developed and far ahead of the rest of the world. We look down on other countries who conduct illegal operations, but then just don't hold anyone here to account. I personally just don't really respect European governments anymore. And the only thing that's really keeping me going is the small grassroots organisations whose combined efforts really help to make a difference. Imagine how many donations can fit inside a shipping container. And it all really does just rely on that one person donating their jacket. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. If you've got any questions, go for them.
That's great. Thank you very much. So in case you just missed the beginning of Dom's video, he was saying that he's now based in Belgrade. So obviously very much at the logistical heart of what's going on. And as I said, Dom is with us this evening. So if you do have any questions about what he's doing now, or indeed the differences between what he's doing now and what he was doing when he was in Calais, and I think in fact Chios was also a very different experience as well, then I'm sure he'll be able to answer those questions. So pop those in the chat box. As Vanessa was saying, Dom is one of a number of people from our community who are really taking the most extraordinary steps to support refugees and asylum seekers on the front line. And we're now going to hear from another incredible Marlow resident who has already given significant amounts of her time to supporting the refugee community abroad, and that's Jasmine Doust.
Hello, I'm Jasmine Doust from Samos Volunteers. I'm one of the board members and one of the co-founders, and helped establish the Samos Legal Centre a couple of years ago now, which has been supported by both Marlow Refugee-Action and Samos volunteers. I'm just going to give you a little overview of the situation on Samos at the moment, the changes in EU laws and policies that have been implemented relatively recently, and the impact on asylum seekers' ability to come to the UK now that the Brexit transition period is over. But mostly we're looking at the work of the Samos Legal Centre, what's been achieved in the last couple of years, what the sort of difficulties have arisen due to COVID, and the plans for the next year. So briefly then, there's around 3,300 refugees and asylum seekers residing on Samos at the moment, the main populations being about a third from Syria, 23% from Afghanistan and 14% from the Congo. There have been very few arrivals from Turkey over the last months due to the decrease in the general global migration, people being prevented from crossing international borders, but also moving internally within countries. Since the 1st of January 2021, both adults and children seeking asylum in Europe are now far less likely to be able to be reunited with their family in the UK. As the Brexit transition period came to an end on the 31st of December, the Dublin III regulation, which was a vital legal route for family reunification, was also closed, and this can no longer be relied upon. In the UK, the Dublin III provisions were not really well known even to immigration lawyers, and given the UK's geographical location, Dublin III was most commonly actually utilised to push people back to where their fingerprints were taken, most, for example, in Greece, as opposed to actually forwards to family reunification. In Greece, people would dream really of becoming or being considered a Dublin case, as reception conditions for people seeking protection in Greece were and still remain pretty dire, and arguably, and in some cases have been found to amount to inhuman and degrading treatment. Without the Dublin III provisions anymore, lawyers on Samos and the other islands and other areas of Greece are limited in their ability to reunify families within the UK, and instead need to utilise quite complicated and narrow provisions under the immigration rules. But luckily elsewhere in Europe, reunification provisions are still available, and this makes up actually quite a large part of the work that is carried out in the Samos Legal Centre. So the Samos Legal Centre is run by Advocates Sans Frontières and the Refugee Law Clinic Berlin, and they provide legal advice and support in the asylum procedures through the provision of information, information about asylum seekers' rights, interview preparation and support in the application process, support for cases before the appeals committee, so where an application has been refused, and information and awareness raising workshops. They also work alongside, obviously, a lot of people in very vulnerable situations through the identification and referrals of people to other organisations, for example, the UNHCR, the United Nations Refugee Agency, submitting requests for interim measures to the European Court of Human Rights, and specific support to the LGBTQI+ community. Obviously, COVID has been impacting everyone all over the world, but luckily Samos has had relatively few cases in comparison. But from March to July 2020, the Samos Legal Centre closed, and the two organisations didn't have any volunteers coming over to Samos due to travel and safety restrictions. However, they did continue work remotely, and consultations were set up virtually so that the residents of the camp could continue to access crucial advice and legal representation. From July onwards, the centre did safely reopen with hygiene procedures in place, but with, of course, a significantly reduced capacity. Luckily at the time, the Samos Volunteers Alpha Centre was available, because that had to remain closed because in Greece schools and community centres were forced to close by law. And so the legal centre team were able to use the alpha space to ensure that people could still access the legal help that they needed. Samos volunteers, meanwhile, were able to establish an online teaching programme and have been supporting self-organised schools within the camp. Both Advocates Sans Frontières and Refugee Law Clinic are continuing their work on Samos 21 as things are gradually going back to normal, with lawyers and legal volunteers coming over to the island to support the project. The teams are in the process of considering whether a bigger space will be a plausible move at some point this year to further increase accessibility to legal aid. They're looking at sort of either going for an entirely new, bigger building or renting a second building just to increase capacity, really. The plans are currently still in their infancy, and we're waiting really to see when the new camp in Samos will open and how accessible it will be for people, as it's located about 15 minutes from the town by car. Marlow Refugee-Action support is, of course, very important still, particularly in this period of time where the world is concentrating so much on the pandemic. Meanwhile, asylum interviews are continuing, and people do need advice to ensure that they have a fair chance in presenting their case. If you have any questions, feel free to just drop me a message at any time. Otherwise, thank you for your ongoing support, and I hope to see you all soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicola, for running that video, and thank you to Jasmine for her continuing energy and efforts. Obviously, the provision of legal advice, legal support is so critical to asylum seekers wherever in the world they are, and Marlow Refugee-Action support for the Samos Legal Centre has really been incredible, so that's absolutely great. The law, human rights law, is obviously a priority for us, as is education and awareness raising. And as an organisation, we continue to be committed to raising awareness about the global refugee crisis among the children and young people of Marlow. We've also been very keen, however, to find education projects supporting refugee children and young people actually where they are. And so we have been particularly excited to be able to contribute to the work of Action for Education, which runs education projects in both Samos and in Chios. And I'm delighted that Jacob Warren, who is Director of Action for Education, is on this call with us this evening. Welcome, Jacob, great to have you here. Currently, we are making regular donations to two of Action for Education's projects. One is funding towards a computer laboratory, which the organisation runs. It provides daily computer classes for women and young adults. And for 6 hours a day, the computers are open for other use and access. And I understand they have about 100 visitors to the computer labs a day, which is amazing. The other funding that Marlow Refugee-Action is involved in is towards accommodation for some of the teachers who are teaching out in Samos. Action for Education has a very interesting model because it's committed to enabling people from the refugee community to be able to teach. But of course, one of the obstacles that those teachers face is living in a tent and being in a very noisy environment at night, which is not conducive to teaching the next day. So we are contributing to accommodation for those teachers. And we're now going to see two clips that Action for Education have sent over to us. One is about a computer lab, and the other is about a place called the Banana House. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Farima. I'm teacher here. Welcome to Banana House, your second house. Here we have some volunteers. At first, our students come here to their temperature, and then they use antibacterial gel, and they go inside. Here, you can see one of our classes, and another side, you can see another classes. We have a bathroom here, and then all of our students can take a shower here. We have a boiling water every day. Here is our kitchen. Most of our students can have a warm and hot meal after their classes. And you can see our garden here. They have some fun here. They can play here, to be relaxed here.
And coming back to me, hello, I'm Joaquin. I'm the coordinator here in Banana House and in Samos. Well, as Farima said, here is the garden where students, they can chill, they can play ping pong, they drink some tea whenever they come. So it's also a safe space for them, and they're always welcome to come. And our volunteers and teachers, they also do that. So here, this is the street. We have a very cooperative and we do have here is the restaurant, and there is a women's center as well. So we work very collaboratively with everyone. And now I'm gonna show you the computer lab.
Hello everyone, I am Akil. I'm the teacher here in the computer lab. This is our office, and this is the computers, the laptops, all of them we have. We are ready to reopen again, and we are happy to do that. And we can also did our project here.
And finally, a big thank you to Marlow Refugee-Action for all their support.
Bye-bye.
It's great, Nicola. Thank you very much. So I hope you all have a sense of the impact that your donations, your money, your support is making in very, very real ways to both the education projects and to the legal centre in Samos. Education is, as we know, so important, but particularly for refugees who may be stuck in camps for years and years. When we think that the Syrian crisis will be entering its 10th year this year, it's an awfully long time for children, young people and adults to be without any prospect of learning and developing and education. So it's a really important contribution that the Marlow Refugee-Action supporters are making, and we thank you very much for that. Just before we proceed to the next part of the meeting, if anybody has any particular questions about the videos that we've just seen, please raise your hand or pop the questions in the chat, because Jacob and Dom are on the call and I'm sure they'd be very happy to answer those questions. I'll just give people a couple of seconds to indicate if they have questions to ask. Otherwise we will move on. Mika, would you like to unmute yourself?
Hi, a question as far as the teaching is concerned. I know that people were going over to Samos, to volunteers to teach for a few months at a time. I presume with the pandemic that is now not happening.
Okay. Jacob, are you in a position to answer that?
Yeah, I certainly can. And actually, can I just say, it's just such a pleasure to be here. It sometimes feels like a lonely business being out on these Greek islands. But I think being kind of flung into the heart of such a strong community is so lovely. But yes, I mean, over the last year and a half, it's been much more difficult to bring volunteers out from various countries and also from America. And now will be a lot more difficult from the UK as well. And that's partly why we've shifted our model to also work a lot more with teachers from the refugee community. It means we don't face that issue. And in fact, those teachers commit a much longer time. On the other hand, we've actually really been so lucky, and many of the volunteers, many of the teachers that had joined us even at the beginning of the pandemic are actually still with us. As bizarre as it might seem, I think people have seen this as also as an opportunity to base them somewhere where they can continue to have an impact and where they can still bring energy, and they're part of a welcoming community. And for that reason, many of our volunteers are still with us. It's almost been one of our longest term period. Wonderful as well.
Great, thank you, Jacob. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacob.
You're welcome.
Any other questions before we move on? Otherwise, we can take them at the end. Okay. Great, thank you. So I'm now going to invite another of our trustees, Julie Purvis, to give us an overview of our strategic plan for the next 3 years. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Tanya. So we around about the middle of last year, we decided it would be a good idea. Obviously, Vanessa has told you a lot about what happened last year, but we just recognised it would be really healthy to stand back and to really reflect on where we were and what we saw as the things we wanted to be doing, and building really a strategic framework for the next 3 years. Obviously, we had to do that remotely, as we weren't able to get together face to face. But we had a couple of away days that were facilitated for us by Alison Hopkinson, who is on this call today, and who did an amazing job in keeping a load of unruly people under control and getting the very best out of us. So it was a really rewarding time. And we started by coming back to our mission. I don't know if you know, but our mission is translating the global refugee crisis into meaningful local action. And so we really wanted to focus on how we could achieve that. And we came up with 3 key areas, and these really now are the basis of everything that we do. And we come back to these areas each time we're looking at new initiatives. And hopefully you will see, as you have already heard, and you will hear more later in the meeting, that we are working within these areas. So the first is building on what had been achieved to grow what is an amazing community of people in Marlow, who genuinely do care about the issues that we've heard about already, and who want to support the work that is being done. So at the moment, we have a number of ways of addressing that community. There's a lot of work that's been done with schools, and Sian in a minute will be telling you more about these as we look into our 2021 plan. We've certainly had a lot of focus on primary schools, and more now looking to the senior schools. And we're really looking in terms of this this point about wanting to really connect the local community. We've been looking at how we can find innovative ways to tell the real life stories that describe the issues, and also to look at success stories. And I hope that even already this evening you've seen some of that in action. There will be certainly a lot more to follow. So that's area number 1. The second is really very much around partnerships, working both locally and internationally, and making sure that we're supporting refugees and able to deliver meaningful results. So, you know, as has been said, we're a little charity. we don't really have aspirations to grow into a very big charity. So, you know, we may get a little bit bigger, but we're happy at the size we are, small and beautifully formed. We really therefore want to work in partnership, and to be able to identify the kind of partnerships that we can support and really help to deliver a lot more value through the contribution that we can make. So again, just the wonderful things we've heard about Action for Education, I think really really endorse that. And again, you'll hear more about that from Sian in a minute. And the third area is to raise funds to support this work, to support those partnerships. And again, I think we've already said, but we're so grateful for all the support we have. And obviously, Vanessa was talking about our fantastic results last year. And we really want to continue to build on that and take that forward. So that is our strategic framework. Again, although we're a little charity, I hope that shows that we actually do think a lot about making sure that we are focused in areas where we can really make a difference, and that everything we do, we reflect on whether that fits into a strategic approach. And if you'd like to find out and learn a little bit more about that strategic direction, then Nicola's put a great sheet together which covers each of those areas and is available on our website. So please do go and take a look at that. And of course, we'd be really happy to answer any questions you may have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks for setting out our plans for the coming years. And again, thank you to Alison Hopkinson for facilitating our discussions. It was really helpful to have you there, Alison. We are now going to hear from Nicola Monk, who you know joined our Board of Trustees last year. She's our newest member, and also from Sian Herschel. Nicola comes with extensive experience of working with volunteers and has also bravely taken on the responsibility for running our social media. I'm not sure that she actually signed up for that when she when she joined us, but anyway, she's doing a great job. Sian is going to explain more about our upcoming plans for 2021. Thanks, Nicola.
Thank you. I think that was quite complimentary about my social media skills. Do you have our slides by any chance? Amazing, thank you. So Sian and I are a little bit of a double act because everything is very intertwined in Marlow Refugee Action. No one thing operates independently. And so what we really wanted to emphasize to you is the idea that all of the things that we've achieved over the last 4 years have been down to supporters and volunteers within the Marlow community and surrounds, contributing in a way that suits them and giving what they can at a time that is right for them. And you might have seen some of these images floating around on our social media when I'm being a bit more organized than normal, to kind of really showcase the cumulative effects of the work that you've done. So you know, we've had 20 talks in churches, 6 school presentations, 5 people teaching English, both in Wickham and in Greece, 10 Syrian suppers serving an incredible 400 meals. I am yet to have one of these meals, so I'm really hoping that lockdown will ease and we'll be able to invite Imad back to have some more of those. 27 long-term and short-term volunteer matches in Calais and Greece, and all of those aid boxes, not to mention the cash, £41,300 across 4 years that have gone to some incredible charities around Europe and closer to home. And so we want to be able to share with you a few of the ways that we specifically are looking for support over the coming 12 months with you through some of the commentary that Sian is going to give you now. Are you there, Sian?
Yes, I'm here.
Lovely.
Thank you, Nicola. So, as Julie mentioned earlier, a really fundamental part of what we want to do as Marlow Refugee Action is to make the global local. And a big part of that is bringing the stories that we're privileged to hear back to Marlow and sharing them with the wider Marlow community. So we're incredibly lucky, as you've seen in Marlow Refugee Action, that we get to see the incredible work that lots of grassroots organisations are doing across Europe and beyond to support refugees. And we're also really privileged to meet people who have been forced to flee their countries and to seek refuge, but are fundamentally no different from us and are incredible in so many different ways. And so a big part of what we've done up until now, and what we want to do even more of going forward, is to go out and tell stories about the work that is happening and about the people that we've met who we're trying to support and help. And so we've done a lot of work already in primary schools in Marlow and have good connections with the schools here. And we want to build on those by continuing to go out and talk to the children who are so interested. You can see this photo here on the left of a presentation that Sarah, one of our trustees, did at a local school, and how engaged the children are, how much they want to hear stories and to understand the challenges that refugees face. We want to do more of those talks in primary schools and also do more outreach in secondary schools going forward. We also want to be talking to youth groups and churches and to local businesses. And we've already got a really brilliant team, and that Sarah, who's on this call, leads, of people who go out and give presentations, but they are always looking for new recruits and people who would like to go out and engage with the wider community. So we'd love to hear from you if that's something that could be of interest to you. And the next areas of the next slide. The next area, which we've also mentioned, is developing and strengthening partnerships. So Marlow Refugee Action is a very Marlow rooted organisation. And so really we see our role as working with the community in Marlow, but also supporting organisations, both local to us, such as Wickham Refugee Partnership and Sanctuary Hosting, Refugee-Aid, who are a little bit further afield in London, and also supporting organisations who are working in other countries. So obviously you've heard about Action for Education and Samos Volunteers and the incredible work they do. And what we would love volunteer support with is going out and seeing the work that those organisations do when it's possible, and both to support them on a practical level. So we've had people who've gone out and taught English. We've had a nurse who's gone out and volunteered in Samos. We've also had a lot of people who've gone out and chopped carrots and sorted clothes, and all of that help is really necessary and valuable. And so we'd love to see more people from the Marlow community going out and working with our partner organisations, and then bringing those stories back and telling the community in Marlow about them and what they've seen. We'd also love to see you working with some of our partner organisations who are closer to home. So we've got various people from those organisations on the call actually. So Alessandra from Refugee-Aid is here. We've also got the two Michaels from Wickham Refugee Partnership here with us. Hello to both of you. And we've also got Rukia from Sanctuary Hosting. So you're seeing some of the, I think someone might need to mute. Thank you. So we've got some of the faces behind the organisations here for you to meet tonight and to ask them any direct questions about how you can get involved. But some of the ways you can get involved with those organisations are hosting refugees who are living in the local area, but who need somewhere to stay, either on a very temporary basis or for longer, and which you can do through Sanctuary Hosting. And working in a practical way with the families that Wickham Refugee Partnership supports, whether that's through English lessons or befriending or decorating houses when people arrive and move into them. And then also Refugee-Aid and work with Marlow Language Centre to support refugees to have lessons there, but they also have a wider teaching programme. And so I know they would like to hear from you if you do have English teaching qualifications and you'd be willing to help refugees locally, but also further afield. Next slide, please. And then obviously a really fundamental part of what we do in order to support all of these amazing partner organisations is raising funds. So we have a lot of fun raising funds. I think the IMAD dinners have been a real highlight of the last few years for me, and I can't wait until we can host more dinners at Cooper's. And the Marlow 5, I'm not a runner, so I have to admit I have not been participating in this, but a lot of our trustees and our supporters have, and that's been a really fun, energetic, and also very successful fundraising activity for us. So we've got some kind of tried and tested fundraising activities that we'd love support with running and organising. But we're always looking for new ideas as well. And we're also looking for people who will go off and organise their own fundraisers with our support, obviously, behind the scenes. And there's lots of ideas bubbling around. So there could be musical activities. There's an opportunity in Refugee Week in June to do some activities maybe which align with other volunteered refugee charities across the UK. And it's also our 5-year anniversary at the end of this year. And so we'd really like to do some activities around that. It kind of blows my mind that we're 5 years old and we're ready to have a 5-year party if we're able to. So we'd love all of your support with those activities. So please do get in touch if you have any ideas and would like to work with us in any way. Back to you, Nicola.
Okay. Obviously that was quite a broad set of opportunities that Sian's just taken you through. And so helpfully, what we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to send around our supporter survey, which allows you to indicate to us what you're interested in. It doesn't commit you to it right away. You can have some time to think about it, but we will respond to you based on what you say and start those conversations so you can find out a little bit more and start to understand what those activities might entail. If you find your areas of volunteering interest sit slightly outside some of the activities we've discussed today, the Marlow Refugee-Action trustees have a very broad base of different organisations that either we've worked with in the past or members of the community have worked with, so we can signpost you in the right direction. I actually took on a new volunteering role with Care for Calais off the back of a chat with Vanessa, and she knew that they were looking in the area closer to where I work, which is Slough, for more volunteers. So that took me in a completely new direction. It's not a charity we normally work with, but she was aware of that opportunity that might suit me, and it did. So off I went. If you would like to plan a fundraiser but don't really know where to start, we have quite a lot of expertise within the trustee committee. Sian and myself come from charity backgrounds, and we can help you work out a plan from scratch that suits your skills, suits your talents, suits the time that you have, because the whole point of all of this work is that it should be fun. You should be getting something out of your volunteering or your fundraising just as much as you're contributing to the work of Marlow Refugee-Action. So we can help you see those ideas through to fruition and help with different resources and bringing a team together if you need a few more people to help pull it off. We're a community for a reason, and so they'll be able to help you along the way with that. If you don't currently have the time to volunteer or fundraiser right now, we still need your help. So amplifying our messaging on social media, helping me be better at using social media would be great. And just sort of participating wherever you can, however you want to. So, turning up at one of the fundraisers, putting your running shoes on and joining Marlow 5. I did Couch to 5K during lockdown wave 1, and so dragged myself around a little 5K by myself during Refugee Week. Wasn't a very presentable picture. It did not look like this lovely one of everyone having a lovely time. It looked a lot more poorly by the end of it, but it was a great challenge for me personally, and helped draw me into the group. And whilst I was dragging myself around, it gave me a pause for reflection and something to think about along the way. If you would like to become a donor, it's also incredibly easy. So you don't actually have to organise an event. You can just set up a regular direct debit through either our bank account or through Virgin Money Giving, or even if it's just occasional activities. So on my birthday, for instance, I did a Facebook fundraiser, which causes lots of really interesting things to happen behind the scenes in our finances. Money just appears from Facebook as if by magic, which was quite exciting for Isabel to see come in and not really know where it came from. But every single activity, every single pound we raise, all adds up to really amplify the voices of refugees and asylum seekers, and explain to people in our community why it's important that we take the time to learn more and help where we can. So like I say, we'll send you an email tomorrow with the survey on it. And if you just want to have a chat, you can reply to that email, just have a conversation to find out a little bit more. Okay, thank you. Oh, and there's another picture of us all.
Thank you, Nicola. That is great. So we are going to move now to the question and answer part of the evening. Tom, have you been, well, I know you have, because I can see you putting lots of links in the chat. So are there particular questions that people have? If you haven't written them down and you'd rather raise your hand and ask them directly, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, and the last link that went into the chat was for our survey form, so it would be great if people can click on that, and we can ask you questions.
Wow, even better. And can we also take this opportunity, there's a number of new people who are on the call this evening who may not already be on our newsletter list, or we may not know you. If you'd like to pop your details into the chat as well, that would be great, because then we can just make sure that we can keep in contact with you if you'd like to keep in contact with us and tell you a bit more about what we're doing.
Yeah, just a name and an email address is all we need, really.
Great.
So any questions? Sean?
I have a question to get us all started. I mean, I think it's really one for Dom and for Jacob. Sometimes the refugee crisis can seem very, very far away in our very lovely, privileged life here in Marlow. And so I'd be really interested to know what first motivated you to go out and start doing the kind of work that you do.
I'm happy to, yeah, I'm happy to do an attempt to respond at that. It was quite a long time ago for me. I went out, it was about 4 years ago that I first came out to Greece, and somehow I just haven't left since. But I think the reasons, you know, why, yeah, the reasons why I came out are very different to the reasons why I stayed. Although I'm saying that, but as I'm reflecting, I'm wondering if it's precisely the opposite. I think I'm actually a music teacher first and foremost, and that was the initial reason why I wanted to come out to the Greek islands, just to run music classes and also teach English and languages. That was the initial motivation, and it's definitely, I think, actually also what has kept me here. That and it's, you know, it's amazing to hear these updates about the, you know, the legal center, and it's also, you know, equally upsetting to hear these updates about what's happening in the UK, and the situation in the barracks is, unfortunately and bizarrely, it reflects so much what has been the situation in Greece for years now, and it's horrifying to know that that's now happening in the UK. But for me, at least personally, and in what we do in terms of running education spaces, we really get the good end of the stick. We get to create basically positive spaces where people come precisely in order to get away from the troubles of everyday life. So, I mean, when you get to go to a centre and your job, in a sense, is to bring a spirit of positivity and a form of escape, and to do that through a structured program, is, I mean, it's just wonderful. And I think that's really just what's kept me here, that it's fantastic work, and you build fantastic relationships. And actually, the longer I stay here, the deeper those relationships become, and the more meaningful they are, and also the more aware I am. So I initially came out with maybe a naive perception of what it would be like, but that's really just matured, and in a sense makes me happier every day to be here. And yeah, I feel sorry for the people having to provide legal advice that really have to listen to the tough stories. We really get to have the good side of things.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll chime in a bit here as well. Pretty much the same as Jacob, actually. I kind of went out with this sort of like naive perception about what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. And then very quickly, you kind of just get snared into it, I think, and then you don't really know quite how to leave. Yeah, it kind of becomes your all-encompassing world. And then you start to think, I don't want to use the word enjoy, but you do kind of, I think, enjoy aspects of your work. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely horrific as well, other parts of it, but yeah. Yeah, now I don't really think I could ever leave, I suppose, the sector. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel exactly the same. I mean, I first went out to Greece probably around about the same time as Jacob, and you know, it's I can only be comfortable with the time that I'm not in Greece, knowing that at some point, hopefully in the not too distant future, I'm going to be going back, and you know, I'll get to see my students again. Although there'll probably be different students they're different students each time, but nevertheless, you know, they're kind of they're sort of the same people, really. And yeah, it's just knowing that you're going to be going back kind of keeps you sane when you're not there.
Great, thank you for those responses. Any other questions that anyone has?
Hello everyone. So my name's Rukia and I'm the new director for Sanctuary Hosting. One of my questions was when you have any of your future meetings in schools and other areas in churches, would it be possible for someone from our charity to go and get involved? Maybe we can talk about what we do as well. So I actually have our project worker here who's really working with hosts in Marlow. Her name is Isabella and she's joining me here.
Yeah, of course. You know, this is something that we can talk about, and as we plan the things that we plan, particularly when we're able to get back and kind of do kind of real life things again. There's no reason at all why you shouldn't get involved in that program. So yeah, just keep talking to us.
In fact, we'd absolutely love that, I think, because it would really bring to life all of the amazing work that's happening. And that's what we always think of ourselves as a kind of an entree, I suppose, into the community of Marlow for other organisations and other individuals.
Okay, can I just quickly answer Alison's question that she's asked in chat about remote advice and learning? Yes, we can. I think we do. In Greece at the moment, the last 2 years I've done kind of 2-3 month stints in a project called Anchor, which is primarily a teaching project, and for the last 2 or 3 months there's been no live face-to-face teaching going on. The Greek classes there, Maria, the Greek teacher, has been running her classes every day in WhatsApp video chat, and it's actually quite hard, particularly teaching groups remotely is not easy. One-to-one, I've done a little bit of teaching, English teaching to a guy in Chios, and you know, on a one-to-one basis that's kind of quite easy, and I do Zoom teaching in the UK as well. But yeah, we can do it, and certainly kind of things like legal consultations and so on work pretty well remotely. So we can and we do it. Is the answer, Alison?
Thanks, Tom. I've actually come across an awful lot of lawyers who find it difficult to volunteer. Accountants find it easier. My breed find it easier. There is a group called Lawyers Against Poverty, for example, and they have no problem at all getting volunteers. So yeah, there might be more legal remote advice than you think would be possible, actually. So it's just something worth considering.
Yeah, I mean, if you, I'm in pretty close contact with the person from ISF France who was one of the original people involved in the legal centre there, and she's also involved in legal projects in Chios and in Thessaloniki. And I can put, if you have lawyers, or if you know of lawyers in the UK that are interested in volunteering, I can, you know, make the connections. So just let me know.
I'd also just add to that as well that Care for Calais have an access team, so their network of lawyers predominantly at the moment are working with asylum seekers in the UK, so trying to get people out of the barracks, trying to get people reunited with their phones that are taken off them sometimes by border control, and also taking up individuals' cases by legal aid to be able to help them with their asylum claims. So that's a rapidly expanding area of work because of the rapidly changing situation in the UK and the deterioration of the context that Jasmine was talking about earlier, which is causing a lot of changing difficulties for people who are already in the UK. So I'm very happy to put people in touch with the Care for Calais Access team if they would like to do that.
I think it's also the case, particularly in Greece, less so in Calais, because that's why they're there. But a lot of there's not that many people there's not that many refugees in Greece actually want to come to the UK. I mean, many have family in Germany, Belgium, Sweden, and so on, and not that many really want to come to the UK, and it actually has a reputation for being relatively hostile and not a place that you really want to go to. Which is why I think that the predominant kind of legal support in Greece is from kind of French and German legal teams.
Great, thank you very much. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to share our contact details so that if anybody wishes to, there we are. So here is where you can find us, our email address, our website address. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. The presentations that you've seen recorded this evening will be on YouTube. In fact, they are on YouTube. And Tom has been putting the links in the chat as we've been going along, which is great. So please do be in contact with us. We would like to thank you all again, not only for coming this evening and hearing about our plans for this year and beyond this year, but also for your ongoing support, which is just so vital. I know we've said it a number of times this evening, but we really are so grateful for those of you who make regular donations, who come to our IMAD dinners, support us when we're running around Marlow, whatever the event is. We really hope that you will continue to support us. Please let us know if you're interested in joining us for some voluntary activities as well. It's going to be an exciting year for all the reasons that we have outlined, and we would love to do that with you. So please do be in contact. From all of the trustees, I'd like to thank you all and wish you a really good evening. Thank you very much. Good night.